Hello and welcome to part two of our introduction to Kotlin. In the previous video, we just looked at the basic syntax for Kotlin. We looked at how to, create variables and how to also assign variables. So you define a variable, then you assign the variable to a value. We learned about variables. We learned about values, which is var and val, and constants, basically. Now, in this video, we are going to look at if and else statements, which is something that Kotlin also provides in every programming languages. If and else statements are for decision making, and they are used in every programming language because you have to have an if and else statements. For example, you want to check if and else statements are basically like decision makers in coding. It checks if something is true. If it's true, it does one thing. If it's not true, then it does another thing. Okay. So in Kotlin, how do we use the if and else statements? I mean, similar to other programming languages. Let's say, for example, I have a constant variable where I have val equals, or should we say immutable variable, equals to 20. And then I will check if age equals to, let's say, 20. I would like to print line. I want to say correct. Else, let's stick with if for now. So that's how you create an if statement in Kotlin. So in case you happen to stumble on this video and you're very new to programming and you just want to know what an if statement is basically a decision maker in code. And you're basically trying to check if something is true. So for example, if the person's age is 20, let's do this. Else, if the person's age is not 20, let's do this. But this particular code is just an if statement. So here we are checking if age equals to 20. Now, if we were to take away and just make this and just leave this equal sign, this is not a conditional statement. What we're doing is we are initializing age also to 20. So this code doesn't actually does anything. It doesn't do much. It doesn't do anything. And if you can see here that we are getting an error because the compiler is confused, is wondering, oh, you used val here to initialize age to 20, and it looks like you're trying to initialize it again. So in this case, it's more like we're trying to initialize age again, and we can't do that because we're using the immutable variable. So in order for us to actually make this into a conditional statement, we need to add this equal sign. Once we add this equal sign, equals, that actually means that we're actually checking to make sure that age equals to 20. And I'm going to click on play. You should see if age, can you see that it says correct? Now, this is great. We have an if statement, which is checking if the age equals to 20. So that's great. That's brilliant. That's amazing. But what if the age is not equals to 20? It's 20. Is there anything else that we can do? Yes, we can add an else statement, because when you have an if, you also have an else. So we can add an else statement to this code, and then we'll end up with something like this. Please do not forget your curly brace, okay? Ideally, you don't really need curly brace if you're only gonna have one line of code in some programming languages. But I like to keep the curly brace in because usually you find yourself writing multiple lines of code. So I always like to keep the curly brace in there because it helps me to also know the structure of my program. So what I'm saying here is if age is equals to 20, run this block of code. Else, if age is not equals to 20, then what are we going to do? We're going to print line and we're going to say incorrect. So we can test this by changing age to 24. Now, in this case, age is not, this first block of code is not going to be correct because age is 24 and we are checking if age is 20. So let us see if we get the correct output. You can see here we have the keyword incorrect because age is actually 24 and is actually not 20. Now, another piece of code that we can also add onto it is we have an else if statement. Okay, so we can extend our if. Right now we have an if and then we have an else. But what if we have an else if, which could be that, oh, we want to check whether age is in between a certain type of number. We can use an else if to also check that. So let's say, for example, at the moment we have if age is equals to 20, we can add an else if to the code. But I'm going to show you how you can do it without being confused. So let's say, for example, if age is equals to 20, we can put else if. Now this else if is like we're checking for another condition, if another condition exists. So we can say if the age is equals to 20. So let's say, for example, we had this 20 here, and then we're saying else if age, right, is less than 20. Okay, and then we can add an else statement also in there. So we can have an if, and then we can have an else if, and then we can also have an else. And you can have many else ifs. You can have many else ifs, as many else ifs as you want. It is completely up to you. Okay. Now this is quite important because it helps you to be able to meet certain conditions in maybe the programming languages that you are trying to write. So we have an if statement, we have an else if, and then we also have an else statement. And now this is great. This is good. But what if we end up having like 15 or 20 or 30 kinds of if and else statements? Well, Kotlin offers something. In other programming languages, you have switch statements. Okay, now you've already learned how to use if and else statements to handle various conditions here. In Switch or in Swift or in other programming languages, there is a more better way of using another kind of syntax or code that you can use instead of using if and else statements. However, when it comes to Kotlin doesn't offer switch statements. If you've heard of switch statements before, it doesn't offer switch statements. What it offers is when expressions, which are similar to switch statements. If you don't know what switch statements is, don't worry. I'm sure that when you start to learn other programming languages, you'll learn about switch statements. Kotlin offers something very similar. So instead of us having, let's say, many if and else statements in this code that we're trying to write, we can keep it quite simple and keep it quite short by using when expressions. So this is how a when expression works. So we have when, and then we can pass in age, and then we're going to have this curly brace open. Now, the when expressions allows us to have some conditions to also check. So in this case, let's say I'm going to have, maybe let's use another example instead of age so that you understand what will come through. So let's say, for example, I had a fruit, right? And my original fruit is banana. Let's say I'm trying to find if banana exists here. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll pass in the fruit variable, which obviously at the moment is holding the value banana. Then I'm going to say apple, right? And then print line, we can say it's an apple. So what this code would do is, first of all, it would check, is fruit equals to banana? Is fruit equals to apple? If apple is equals to banana, then it's an apple, right? And we can set multiple of these when expressions. We can add multiple to it. So we can have print line here, and we can say it's a banana. We can say cherry as well. And then we can say it's a cherry. And then we can also have an else statement as part of it, because if it's none of them, we would like to actually say unknown fruit because we don't know what it is. So this is how a when expression is used. That's how a when expression is used. Okay, so you can see here, because we have banana here, look, it sees banana, and then it says it's a banana. So that's how we use if and else statements, and we also use when expressions. And I will see you in the next video. Please like, subscribe, comment on it, and if it's helping you, and yeah, God bless.